Morning or early afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. So excited to welcome you all to today's B Corp Certification Getting Started webinar, talking all about how to navigate the platform and get started on your B Corp journey. So I'm Max Hayes. I'm a growth manager with B Lab US and Canada. I use pronouns he, him, and I'm joining you all from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on the homeland of the Lenni Lenape people. So a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce the team who will be helping me run the webinar today. There is a live caption option available to you, but you need to manually enable it on your end. And we also welcome your questions throughout our webinar today. We just ask that you drop them in the Q&A box instead of the chat, and we'll hope to answer as many questions as we can live, but any that we don't get to, we'll be sure to send out in the follow-up to this event. We may also drop a few links in the chat throughout, but everything we will share will also be linked in the slide deck, which will be sent out after the event as well. So please take a moment to use the chat to introduce yourselves, connect with one another. Just make sure that your chat is set to everyone and just not the event hosts. So I'm joined today by my colleague Carrie Ann Reeves, who is our customer success and growth manager at B Lab US in Canada. She'll be helping us out with the presentation today, getting y'all's questions answered and in the chat. And then I'm also joined by my colleague Hey Ron, who is helping out behind the scenes with our tech today. So I'm going to kick it over to Carrie Ann to go through our agenda and get us started on today's content.
Okay, thanks, Max. Yes, so we are going to start with an overview of the platform itself, which is called the B Impact platform. Some of you may be familiar with it and have logged in before. We did an update of the platform in March when the new standards were released. So if you haven't logged in a while, it might look a little different. We're going to go over to the foundation requirements after that, which most of you should be familiar with as they are transferring over from the old standards. So that part shouldn't be too new. And then we'll walk through the assessment setup process, which is probably the newest and potentially most confusing portion of the new audit platform process. Max will be doing a live demo of that process. So it's not to where you're in the right place to get all your answers for how to navigate that. And then we'll go over to some best practices about how to project manage getting through certification on the new standards as they have changed significantly since the older version. So those will be some best tips and tricks. And then we'll go over the resources and tools that are available to you regarding the new standards. And then we'll close out with a open Q&A and next steps for how to really get started. So just an overview in case you uh, need a refresher, but B Lab was founded in 2006, and we are a global network now of businesses who envision creating an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economy that works for all. This is a growing movement and it is ever changing and includes many different industries and companies of all sizes. So here's a snapshot of the representation we've got going around the world here. You can see that the US and Canada market is sitting around 2,400 plus B Corps currently certified. And we've got lots and lots of growth happening all across the world in different regions. So now we're going to talk about the Impact platform for a little bit, as well as a brief overview of the new standards and some of the requirements. So here you can see is the essentially the starting point on the B Impact platform. So when you log in, if you've gone through setup already, this is what you should see. It is a comprehensive framework to manage your assessment and the requirements that will be within it. Yes, so in terms of things that have changed regarding the platform since the previous standards, it's still B Corp certification, as a reminder, is still a whole business certification. We do not certify brands specifically or departments of a company. We are looking at your company's operations as a whole. This is new to the standards version is that we have a separate third-party auditor assurance program where the actual auditing of your requirements is done out of house. So previously it was done by analysts within B Lab's infrastructure, but now that auditing process has been taken fully out of house, and this is in line with best practices for like different certifications in the world. There are also now mandatory requirements across 7 different impact topics. This has changed from the previous version of the standards in that before you only needed to reach an 80-point score minimum in order to submit your assessment for review. Now you will need to meet a baseline standard of requirements based on the company's industry and size in order to submit for review. So instead of being able to just like be strong in one area and potentially not as strong in another, we have every company must meet certain requirements. And then there's also now the requirement to improve during each certification cycle. So there will be guidance about what you need to do between your starting year when you certify, and then between then and the next time you have to certify, what sort of improvements, like concretely, you'll need to implement. So, just to give you a brief overview of the different impact topics, they're listed here. There are 7 impact topics, and then we also have the foundation requirements. So, if you're counting 8 little sections there, that's why. They cover the foundation requirements, which is like the legal requirement and your eligibility for certification. And then we also have climate action, purpose and stakeholder governance, environmental stewardship and circularity, human rights, and fair work. There's also government affairs and collective action, and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion requirements. So we're really taking a comprehensive look under these new standards at your business as a whole for all of the topics that we care about. I'm going to now transition it over to Max, and he's going to do a bit of a deep dive on the foundation requirements specifically.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that overview, Carrie. And like Carrie had mentioned, there's a lot of new and exciting updates happening in the B Corp world. So if you've been using our platform for a while and you're coming back to get up to speed, or you're brand new to the movement, we're excited to have you all here. So we're already getting a few questions around in the Q&A. How do I know if my organization and its type is eligible? And so this is where the foundational requirements will be really important to understand. And this is really B Lab's way of trying to make it super clear which companies can get certified and which companies cannot get certified. So we'll go through each of these requirements in more detail, but there are really 3 core foundational requirements. Ensuring that your business is eligible based on its structure and industry it operates in, making sure that your business is able and willing to meet the legal requirements for certification, and then also making sure that your company is able and willing to meet the transparency requirements around risk profile and disclosing any potential risk that's identified through our process. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into this first stage of determining your eligibility. So the first one, the company meets entity qualifications to become a B Corp. So this was one of the questions that came up already in the Q&A. Does B Lab certify nonprofits? So it's important to note that when we're talking about the entities that qualify, B Lab is a company level certification. So we're not a product level certification like organic certification or fair trade. We're going to be looking at the whole company. And also, really, the core of the B Corp certification is to help folks understand which for-profit businesses are operating at a higher standard of social and environmental consideration. So, in order to become a certified B Corp, you need to have at least 12 months of business operations. You need to be registered as a for-profit entity. So, we do not certify nonprofits, government entities, or individual divisions or departments within a company. And then also, we don't certify government entities. So it's really important that your business is for profit, operating in a competitive market, and has more than 12 months of operations. The next one is FR 1.2. So the company is not significantly involved in industries that undermine B Lab's theory of change. So I'll show you in the demo where we can see the full list of this. But there are certain industries, while B Lab works with companies of all shapes, sizes, and colors. We don't work with companies in certain industries. So we saw one question, somebody was asking about their specific industry. Going through these foundational requirements will help you determine that. But industries like fossil fuels, the defense industry, tobacco, those are ones that directly oppose B Lab's theory of change of building an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system. These other ones are a little more straightforward. So you need to be in compliance with local and national laws and regulations. You need to consent to sharing accurate information with us. And you need to be willing to meet the transparency requirements for certification. So that does mean if there's any risks that are identified, that you're willing to disclose that on your public profile. All companies that get certified have a public profile in the B Corp directory so that consumers and stakeholders can understand more about your business and the standards that you're meeting. So the second foundational requirement is the legal requirement, and this is really one of the backbones of B Corp certification. So I love this part of B Corp certification because part of our goal as a movement is to transform our economic system. And as we know, especially in the US, but also abroad, most companies that are created, especially corporations, have one legal responsibility, and that's to maximize profit for shareholders. And so, in order to become a B Corp, we actually require our certified companies to expand their fiduciary duties, legally allowing them to do more than just consider profit. And this is a core requirement for certification. It's something all companies need to do. So, getting clarity on whether your business is able and willing to make this change is really important. Also, depending on your company's size, will determine the timeline that you need to meet it. So, smaller businesses will need to have this completed before the end of their audit, whereas larger businesses would receive a small grace period. And so most companies will need, who are registered as a corporation, will need to convert to what we call a benefit corporation. And so this is essentially a legal status that you would file for within your state, essentially allowing your business to do more than just consider profit and requiring you to consider your business's impact on a wide variety of stakeholders. B Lab was an early champion of benefit corporation status. It's available in more than 30 states across the US. I think the exact number is around 37, and there are also some regions abroad that have benefit corporation as well. We have a legal tool that's linked here that will help you figure out exactly how you would meet this requirement based on where your business is incorporated and what structure you have. We also have some great webinar recordings linked here. So if you want to learn a little bit more about it, hear from some B Corps about what this process entailed, check out these webinars. They're really useful. We have them for LLCs, US corporations, and Canadian corporations. But if you have more questions, you're not getting the clarity you need, you have a different structure than what's listed here, excuse me, you can always reach out to us and we'd be happy to help you get the clarity that you need. So this is what it would look like in the platform. We'll see it a little bit more in the live demo. But as you're going through, you would essentially, once you've determined your pathway, maybe it's converting to a benefit corporation, maybe it's amending your articles of incorporation. Once you've done that change, you would actually want to upload that legal documentation to our platform, and then our risk team would review it and approve it. And so again, if you're a smaller company, highly recommend getting that process started now. That small definition is making 10 million a year or less in annual revenue or having 50 employees or less. And if you're larger than that, you might receive a grace period depending on the exact structure of your business. Okay, so that covers the legal piece. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or reach out to us. But now I want to move on to the risk profile. So this is the third foundational requirement. So essentially, once you get into the platform and you complete assessment setup, the first thing you want to do is go to this tab here called Foundational Requirements. And here you can see what we talked about today. So eligibility, making sure you've met those criteria of being for profit, more than 12 months in a competitive market, not working with those industries we don't certify. The legal requirement, making sure you know which entities need to do it, how they're going to do it. And then the last piece here is your risk profile. So the risk profile is essentially 14 questions related to your employees, products, operations, and reputation. And it's basically a yes/no questionnaire. And depending on how you respond, there may be additional requirements your business needs to meet. So if you do answer yes to any of the risk profile topics, you likely would have additional requirements that would need to be met. And so these would be things that help ensure that those risks are going to be addressed and identified. And like I mentioned, those risks will also be part of your B Corp profile. So folks will be able to see transparently your responses to this. And then you may need to have, and you would likely need to have additional requirements that would be met depending on which question you answered yes or no to. So, for example, if you've had a lawsuit in the past 5 years, you would likely need to meet additional requirements related to having transparency around that, clear grievance and whistleblower mechanisms, those kind of things. So, that's why we recommend after you do setup to go right to the foundational requirements and complete this, because that'll make sure you have a complete picture of which standards you need to meet in order to get certified. And we also have more information about this in our Knowledge Hub. You can see on a lot of the slides we have Knowledge Hub links here. So if you're anything you want to dive into more that's kind of like going off in your head right now, just remember that after your session today, we'll send you the deck and you can go through and read more information on these topics. So now that we've covered the foundational requirements, how to know if your business can get certified, the legal requirement, and the risk piece, we're going to shift gears a little bit to actually getting started in the platform. So how do I set up my account? How do I figure out which entities need to meet legal? And then what standards do I actually need to meet? So again, if you are brand new to the movement, the first thing you'll need to do is go in and create a free B Impact Assessment account. This is a free tool. So again, if you are on the call today and you're like, man, I am a nonprofit, or I'm just looking at to do this for a specific department within my company, you're still able to go ahead and create an account. You just won't be able to certify. So that's one thing that is unique to B Lab is our flagship product and tool. The B Impact platform is free and available to all. We have hundreds of thousands of users, even though we only have about 10,000 certified companies globally. We've also recently implemented a multi-factor authentication process to help keep your data more protected and secured in our platform. So you'll notice when you're logging in, you might be prompted to do that. Make sure you have an authentication app downloaded on your phone and to save your recovery code in case you lose it. But if you get stuck, you're not able to log in, you can always log a ticket with us and we will help you get your account unlocked so you can gain access. We also have a way for you to add team members. So again, the B Impact Assessment is not designed explicitly to be a project management tool, but it is a great place to have multiple collaborators working on the standards. And so highly recommend that if you are like going on this journey of B Corp certification, if you have a couple colleagues that you can do this with, add them as team members to the platform, divide up some of the work so that it's not all on your shoulders. We often see that folks who go through the journey with the community around them are more likely to be successful in the process. But also, if you're a sole proprietor or have a small team and you're the one leading it, you can also definitely do this on your own. You'll also see that there's an ability to actually assign different permissions to different folks. So if you do have team members who are supporting you on this, but you don't want them to have access to all the documentation and confidential information you're uploading, there are ways to assign different permissions. So just make sure that when you're adding folks to the account, you're assigning them the correct permission status. And you can learn more about this in the Knowledge Hub itself. So then I'm going to go ahead and switch gears to the live demo. So again, we'll send the slides out. These following slides kind of walk through what we're about to go through in the live demo, and I'd rather do that together with y'all now instead of showing y'all a bunch of slides. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, switch over. Okay. All right. So once you have made it through your login process and you're in, here is what your B Impact platform looks like. If you have not yet created an account, before you get to these steps, you'll have to go through a registration process, provide some basic information. But basically, the first thing you'll need to do when you log in is complete assessment setup. So that's located here under the assessment tab. These are the main tabs you'll be working on in the B Impact platform. Your settings window is over here, like I mentioned, where you can manage your account and add and remove team members. But If you're logging in for the first time or logging back in and it's been a while, definitely start with assessment setup because this will help you determine what your company's specific requirements are based on your unique situation. So there are four stages that make up assessment setup. We'll go through them really quickly together. So the first thing you want to do is kind of just a warning of what to expect in this process and what documentation we recommend having on hand so that you can go through setup in a smooth process. So we want you to have your articles of incorporation or at least know how you're structured and where. That'll help figure out that legal piece. Understanding your ownership structure. So as a company level certification, it's really important if you have subsidiaries, a parent company, a joint venture, a sister entity, that you know how all of those entities are connected, because it is possible that we might want to include multiple entities within your B Corp certification. You'll also want to have a P&L statement on hand, or at least knowing your annual revenue so that we can help determine your size. And then some employee records or a roster as well, because size is also determined by the number of employees you have. So ideally, you have these documents together, ready to go, or off the top of your head, you have a sense of what your business is looking like. Because the next stage, we're going to dive into confirming some of the eligibility. So, like I mentioned, we'll ask you specifically if you're structured as a nonprofit, a brand or division controlled by the government. So, this will really help confirm your company's eligibility going through these steps. And then once you do that, you'll see the progress bar move along the top and it'll confirm your specific eligibility. So you can see, congratulations, eligible for B Corp certification as a for-profit entity operating in a competitive market that's been around for more than 12 months. So this third step is where you're likely going to spend a little bit more time than the first two. So this is a process that we call scoping. So this is really where that org chart comes into play and understanding how the business seeking certification is related to other entities and if those related entities need to be included in your assessment itself. So we can see here that we're going to be asking some information around your ownership. So are you a wholly owned subsidiary? Are you publicly traded? Things like that. So that is important to note. If you are a wholly owned subsidiary, maybe we would need to include your parent company in the process. So you can see we'll ask a lot about the subsidiaries you own, your parent companies, the aspects of your business that you share with other businesses, if your leadership team has authority over the entity seeking certification. And essentially, there'll be two outcomes after you provide your responses to this. So either our system will be able to determine exactly which entities need to be included in the certification and which ones need to meet the legal requirement. So let's say, for example, when I registered, I entered that Max B Lab is an LLC. And I know now after completing this scoping section that this LLC is the legal entity that needs to amend its governing documents to meet the legal requirement. If you have a subsidiary that's not wholly owned, it's likely that both your parent company and your subsidiary would need to meet the legal requirement. So our system here will flag exactly which entities need to meet the legal requirement and give you a little information about what you can expect in terms of logo usage and how to answer the assessment. So if our system is not able to determine your scope automatically, you're basically going to get like a flag or a message that says, your assessment has been flagged for human review. And then you would essentially be stuck at this stage. And one of our team members would reach out, a scoping specialist, to learn more about your business and make sure that we can give you a clear scope. Because having this is super important to know which entities need to be included and what that means. There might be a situation in which your parent company needs to be included, and maybe they're not able or willing to meet the legal requirement for certification. So we really want to make sure folks have a clear scope before they dive in and go deeper into the assessment and the standards. If you're just exploring right now and you're like, I don't know if I'm ready to do this, I just want to see the standards. If you have answered There would be essentially an option here to do what's called skip setup. And you would skip these first three steps. And the only one you would need to complete here is the fourth one. So even if you're not interested in certification and you just want to explore, or you are interested in certification, everyone will need to complete this last task called customizing your assessment. So instead of looking at your legal structure, we're going to be looking at the size of your business. So you can see what we're going to be doing is asking about your company's last fiscal year end date, the revenue that you've generated, as well as the number of employees you have. These factors will essentially determine what your company's size is. Then we're going to be asking a little bit more about what does your business do? How do you generate revenue? What operations do you have? And that will determine what sector does your business fall into. So, for example, let's say my test account is for a small consultancy, or I guess we can see a medium-sized consultancy. We would likely end up on the services with minor environmental footprint because we earn 90% or more of our revenue from not selling a physical product. I saw somebody in the Q&A mention that they are a manufacturer. They would likely end up on the manufacturing track, and the standards will be tailored to your organization based on your size, sector, and industry. Looks like I should have said I was a architecture design company, not a consultancy, but maybe it's a consultancy for that does architecture and design. But essentially, this last step here in setup is really important because it will also tailor the standards themselves to your business. For example, we would want to make sure that we're asking information about employee well-being and safety if you're a manufacturing facility or if you have animals in your supply chain that we have standards specific to those things. So once you complete the four sections in setup, you'll get to this progress bar of 100%, and there will essentially be like a green button or window that will pop up in the corner, and you want to actually hit submit setup. So once you've completed everything and you've hit submit setup, it'll either be a green button up here or at the bottom right hand of your screen. Once that is done, then our system will generate an actual assessment for you. So then once you hit submit, you would go to this tab here under assessment to the dashboard tab. So now we can see based on the information I provided in setup, my company has 49 sub requirements that need to be met. And like Carrie Ann mentioned, these 49 sub requirements are divided across the seven impact topics. And unlike our old standards, this isn't a choose your own adventure anymore. You will need to be in compliance with all 49 sub requirements in order to get certified as a B Corp. So let's go ahead and look at an example of what is within our dashboard. So our dashboard has some really helpful features. We can filter by impact topic, by who we've assigned them to, by the status or the due date. So let's start with this first one, purpose and stakeholder governance. Your company must establish a public purpose statement which meets the following criteria. So we can see exactly what the standard is, what needs to be included. We can even get some more details on this topic itself. We can also find some supplementary resources in terms and definitions if you're looking for more information on the topic. But I want to call out here under properties a couple features that will help you leverage the B Impact platform to be useful for you and your team as you're working to meet B Lab standards. So you can see that there are essentially a couple different statuses here. We have not started, in progress, done, evidence ready, and variance approved. So this is a great way to help indicate like if you're making progress on it or if you've already met it. So maybe you want to start by adding a due date, assigning a team member, maybe somebody on your board or your marketing team wants to take the start at creating that public purpose statement. You could assign a specific team member to that project. You could add a due date of when they would need to get it done by. Let's say I'll have till the end of next month. And we can say, I've touched base with Max. He knows what he needs to do. It's in progress. Once I have got this statement done, met these criteria, I'm going to want to include evidence. So every sub requirement will require evidence because once you've met all the sub requirements and uploaded all your evidence, you can say, hey, B Lab, we're ready to go work with an auditing partner to get our data verified and meet that gold standard of having that third party verification. And so again, really important to make sure you upload evidence for all of your requirements because that's what will be needed during that third party audit. So let's say I have my public purpose statement, it's on my website. I'll take a screenshot of my website or create a PDF with a link to where it can be found and clearly highlighting how these criteria are met. I can go ahead and hit attach evidence either directly from my computer or through a tool we've created called the Documentation Hub. The documentation hub is a place where you can store documents. So let's say, for example, you want to upload your employee handbook because that employee handbook might be the evidence that you're going to upload to several sub-requirements to show that you're meeting it. So you can store all the documents that you're using here in the document hub. And then instead of needing to upload the employee handbook to every sub-requirement, you can just tag this specific piece and mention what page the specific evidence can be found on. So another example might be in the dashboard. Let's say we wanted to go look at the fair work section. That's likely where your employee handbook would be helping you meet a lot of these requirements. You could go in, say, great, I already know this is in our handbook. Every employee has a contractor offer letter meeting this criteria. You could hit attach evidence, go to the documentation hub, pick that one, and say exactly it's on page 25. So again, this is just a little demo to show you how you can utilize the different features in the platform itself so that you can work with multiple team members, store your documents here, and ultimately start making progress towards meeting the 49 sub requirements. So the last thing that we haven't talked about yet is variance approved. So a variance is essentially a way to say that your company is not able to meet a specific sub requirement for a variety of reasons. Maybe data is not available. Maybe it's illegal in your country or region to do what's being asked of you. So if you do need to request a variance, you would do that through the Knowledge Hub. There's a way to log a ticket. So let's see. For example, if you wanted more information, we have this question mark feature up here in the top right corner, and this brings you into our Knowledge Hub. So let's say we wanted to learn more about a variance. Now, this is the equity mechanism. Did I spell variance wrong? Answer found equity mechanism. No, this is not what we wanted. But essentially, this is another way to get more information on the standards themselves. So we can see that we'll even provide evidence examples. Maybe you're looking for an evidence example for what do I need to provide for this specific piece. So the Knowledge Hub is a great tool to get more information. It's also a way for you to contact us and log a ticket. So for example, if you did want to request a variance, you would basically log a ticket with us. And so you can do that right through here. So if there is anything where you're like, I'm not clear what this is asking. I couldn't find it in the Knowledge Hub. Need some support navigating this. You can log a ticket with us right here. Carrie Ann, myself, and another colleague are behind the scenes going through these, making sure you get your responses answered so that you can reach out to us this way. So yeah, like I mentioned, there's a couple different ways you can use it. You can filter here, or you can go to the specific impact topic itself by clicking in. Foundational requirements we've already covered. You can see which ones I need to start, which ones need to be completed. We've gone through setup already. And then we have our documentation hub. So really the only other pieces to capture is as you're working through the assessment, once you're like, all right, I know we're going to meet these 49 requirements. I have already uploaded my evidence. What do you need to do next? The next step is to say, hey, B Lab, we're ready to go be audited. The way you would want to do that is by going through this submission tab here under certification. So before you can submit for audit, there's a few things that you'll need to do. Providing a little bit more basic information about your company, confirming you've done the foundational requirements, so you've likely already done that. Excuse me. And then you can see here that you will need to upload evidence for all of the sub requirements. And then lastly, you would need to indicate what brands your company is selling within your business and agree to the certification agreement. The certification agreement is a contract that needs to be sent out manually. So if you are at the moment, it needs to be sent out manually. There are plans to automate this stage, but if you are like, hey, I know we're ready, we're getting ready to hit submit and certify, and you can't get your certification agreement through the platform itself, go ahead and just log us a ticket and say, hey, can you please send us our certification agreement? We're also monitoring folks' progress and are doing our best to reach out and send folks agreements before they get to that place of being ready to hit submit. So once you've met all the standards and finished your submission section, there will be a big green button that will say submit. That basically tells us it's time to connect you with one of our auditing partners. So once you hit submit, you'll go into what's called the B audit platform and work with one of our audit partners. Once you're in that platform, you'll essentially need to schedule an audit with an auditor and then go through that audit process. Once that audit is complete, you'll come back to our platform to finalize your agreement, which is essentially creating your public profile as well as signing a licensing agreement to utilize our IP. So you can see here is an example of the B Corp public directory. We can look at a company that was recently certified on the new standards, RICOLA, and we can see here what information will be made transparent on your public profile, some basic company information, as well as responses to the risk questionnaire. Also, if you're looking to find other B Corps in your area or region, the B Corp directory is the best place to do that. Okay, let's see here. Is there anything else I wanted to cover? Yes. Last thing here is under other tools. You can still access the old standards if you're interested. So maybe your business was leveraging them in the past. You still want to go back and see what your responses were. You can see that here. And then we also still have our SDG Action Manager, which helps you measure your company's performance against the SDGs, which is the Sustainable Development Goals established by the UN. It's really important to note, though, we are no longer certifying companies on the old standards. So the only way to become a B Corp now is to meet all of the requirements listed here in your dashboard tab after you complete setup. So again, just as an overview, quick summary, once you log in, first thing you'll be required to do is complete assessment setup. Once you've entered all that information, make sure you hit the big green submit button. Once you do that, your assessment will be created. Before you even dive into the assessment, go to your foundational requirements, complete those first, just to confirm that your company is eligible, you know what your legal requirement is, and that you're able and willing to meet it. Also, your risk profile will add additional sub-requirements depending on how you respond. So then once you've done those things, then you can jump into the dashboard itself and start making progress and meeting all of the requirements. And this is really where if you're the one kind of project managing this, leading this, it's at this stage where you want to add some team members, start assigning them tasks. So maybe your HR manager is going to be responsible for taking the fair work and human rights section. Maybe your ops lead will be taking environmental stewardship and circularity. And maybe your leadership team or a member of your board wants to take on purpose and stakeholder governance. So this is just another great way to like get folks involved, divide up the work so it doesn't all fall onto you. And if it is all on you right now doing the process, I recommend starting with impact topics that are feeling relevant for your business right now. Maybe you're trying to figure out how do I engage folks in my supply chain better? How do I get more engaged in my local community? These are things I'm already concerned of or thinking about or a priority for my organization. Start with impact topics that feel relevant. So that would likely be human rights and government affairs and collective action. No need to start with the first one. You can definitely start on whichever one feels most relevant for you. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and go back to our slides real quick because now we want to talk a little bit more about project management. So I'll share the screen. All right. So you've likely already heard me hammer some of these pieces home, but again, important to have a main project manager, important to have staff from other team members support, creating that B team, and scheduling a monthly or quarterly check-in just to see where folks are, making sure evidence is being uploaded, drumming up ideas, setting goals. And so we've covered a lot of like the process itself and For all the folks here, you're probably like, yep, this makes total sense. And then when it's time to go back and get internal buy-in with your team, you're like, all right, Max covered a lot. What were the things he was saying again? So these slides here are really to help you give an overview of the process, either remind yourself or to get that internal buy-in from your team. So you can see here the four main stages of creating your account, benchmarking against the standards, undergoing the audit, and then joining the community. So this is really the four main stages of the customer journey. And we have a couple slides here giving you some more information, some estimates into the timeline it takes to do this. Really, what we want to see is that folks are submitting for audit within 12 months of creating their account or kind of getting started on benchmarking. So, because we'll be looking at your last completed fiscal year or the last 12 months, trying to get this self-assessment done in 12 months helps make your life easier and prevent the need to update information. Because after 12 months expires, you would need to go through setup again. You need to provide your new fiscal year information. So I recommend setting that goal of trying to get the self-assessment done and hit submit within 12 months. The audit itself can really depend in how long it takes, depending on the complexity of your company and any gaps identified during the process. Um, I see there's a question here around the cost of getting certified. So cost is proportional to your company's annual revenue. So the more revenue you're making or the larger your company is, the higher cost associated with certification. And there are essentially two main fees. You'll have your fee to go through the audit process and then your fee to license RIP. We'll share more about pricing in the chat and in the follow-up to this as well. And then now I want to make sure we go over resources and tools available to folks. Carrie Ann, am I kicking it back over to you for this section?
Yep, thanks for that. Okay, that was a lot of information. Thank you, Max. So, switching gears a bit, we are going to host an in-person workshop, which is a very cool opportunity to interact with B Labbers like ourselves, as well as trained B consultants in person in a couple cities this upcoming fall. So, this specific workshop that is going to be in August, going around to a couple different cities, is going to be regarding the stakeholder mapping sub-requirement, which falls under the purpose and stakeholder governance 2.1 requirement. So if you're looking to get help in person from experts that have been studying the standards since they were released, this would be a great opportunity. If you're based in the New York City area, the Bay Area, Portland, Oregon, or Toronto, these are coming to the cities listed there in August. So you can register using the links, and the cost is $95 per session, which, if you compare that to trying to get consulting one-on-one help, would be pretty cost effective, considering how many different consultants and experts will be in the room. So if you have any questions, you can email community@bcorporation.net to get more information about that. And then we are also hosting a virtual session on the climate action uh, impact topic. So that one will not be any specific city as it's all done virtually. We did in-person workshops earlier this spring just to trial them, but there were so many different people who from different cities who were really wanting to get in on this training that we decided to make a virtual option available. So you can register for the event at the link here. We'll send the deck out later. The cost is $40 to attend, so it's like a lot less given the virtual format, but it will be super useful to be able to meet the climate action requirements. And then we have some offerings that are just completely free and self-paced. These are courses you can take at your leisure anytime, and you can enroll in them. We have courses on how to go through the foundational requirements and it's a deep dive on those requirements. So if you need a little bit more guidance or you just want to be able to go at your own pace, those are a good option. And then we also have them for the year zero fair work and human rights impact topics. So highly recommend checking those out before you really like get into trying to meet the requirements as you'll have a better understanding from the get-go if you go through these. And then we have some general resources that you can access. So we've got our standards version 2 impact topic resource PDF. It's downloadable here. Again, all the links will be included in the deck. Those are just all of our kind of a shorthand of where you can find information on each impact topic. And then for a general inquiry or anything process related, or just like if you don't know where else to go, the Knowledge Hub is a great place to start, as you can just type in your question into the search bar and it'll come up with related topics. So that's also available to everyone for free. If you have specific questions after like going through the resources or going through the courses, and you're just like you want to get into the nitty-gritty, or general questions are also acceptable. You're free to submit a ticket on our portal. It's also on the Knowledge Hub, or you can email certify@bcorporation.net directly. Those questions all go to me, Max, and our teammates. We're a very small team, so if you've been waiting on a response for a while, many apologies. With our summer schedules, it's also kind of just sometimes chaotic, but we are doing our best to get back to you and appreciate you bearing with us. Okay, so we're gonna do a poll on a scale from, I believe it'll be 1 to 5. Yes. I feel more prepared to progress in my company's certification journey as a result of this webinar. 5 is I strongly agree, and 1 is strongly disagree. So if you can just fill that out, we are gauging the effectiveness of our offerings. Okay, looks like got 13 out of 21 people voted. 15. Okay, we're getting there. 16. Okay, we're real close, guys. I like 5 more of you. If you can just throw your vote in there. Don't think about it too hard. Just whatever comes to mind. But you will give it 1 more minute so we can have the last 10 minutes here for Q&A. Okay, 18. Okay, I'll let the last 3 of you get to it or not. But I think we want to open it for Q&A now. And we've gotten a lot of questions in the Q&A already, which are really great and informed, and you guys are really paying attention. So can really appreciate those. Um, all right, Max, do you want to kick it off looking at the Q&A that the ones we've received already?
Yes, so there was one good question here about setup. So let's say you've already completed setup and you can see like on my view, the submit button is grayed out. Let's say you need to actually go back and make some changes. You went back and looked at your org structure and you're like, oh wait, yeah, we do have a subsidiary. You can always go in and edit your responses. Once you edit your responses to a specific section and you make that change, then you will basically be able to resubmit setup. So if there are any changes that have happened when you hit save and continue, if there is anything different, when you go back to setup, the green button will be re-enabled and you can resubmit setup to get a new outcome. So if there are changes to your business, if it does take you more than 12 months as your benchmarking, if you acquire another entity, definitely go back and edit your setup responses. Also see a lot of folks having questions around the legal requirements, so I can just show real quick too what the legal tool looks like. So it's essentially a drop-down menu where you would enter more information about your business. So where are you incorporated? Let's say you're a US LLC in Ohio. You can go put that in exactly. enter your corporate form, and get the guidance. So, as an LLC, you would need to amend your governing documents to include this purpose and directors clause into your operating agreement, so you can see exactly what needs to be done. And again, those webinars that we referenced as well is a great place to hear more about how do companies do this? How do you get buy-in from your leadership to make that happen? But we're also always happy to help support if you have any questions or things come up. Tara, I see you have a question about recording. We are recording this, so you will get the recording, you'll get the deck, all of these resources to leverage. I see Carrie Ann dropped the link to our fee structure. It's important to note that our fee structure will likely be changing next year. So the information that you're seeing is specific to submitting for audit this year. Next year, our fee structure will look a little different as we're working to transition, as we're now transitioning to working with a third party for that audit process.
And it's possible that the fees may go up. So this is probably a good incentive to, if you're considering submitting soon, that would be a good time to do it before the changes in 2027. I'm seeing a question from Alessandra that says, "How do you get to that page?" Which page were you showing just now, Max?
The legal requirement tool.
Okay, so the legal requirement tool, yeah, that will be linked in the deck. Basically, if you just Google legal requirement B Lab, I'm sure it'll show up as like one of the first results. So it
I
lives
can
on the B
also
Lab
I
website.
can also show you all how to find it in the platform. So you don't have to Google anything. So you can find it in the platform. So when you're in the foundational requirements and you're going to answer the legal requirements section, you can see there's this hyperlink here, learn how it works, and that will bring you directly into the legal requirement tool. So again, the foundation section legal requirement will bring you right here. So based on setup, I know this entity needs to meet legal. I set an entity type, it's incorporated in Ohio as an LLC. Yeah, you can even indicate if you've already done it. Um, so, right, I would add that purpose and directors clause, making it a benefit LLC, save that, and then I would upload my articles of incorporation showing that I've added that purpose and directors clause to my operating agreement. So everything can be found right here in the foundational requirements tab under legal requirements. And once you attach evidence, the status will change to review in progress. That review will happen, but don't let that review in progress stop you from keep working on the platform, meeting the standards, or even submitting for audit. Our team will make sure that legal requirement is reviewed before your audit is completed.
Yeah, and there was a question from someone about if you need to upload or complete legal, I believe, before you start on the requirements in the assessment. The answer to that is no. You can start working on the requirements outside of the legal requirement before you have completed it. So if you're like filing to be a benefit corporation and it takes a couple of weeks or months or whatever, you can feel free to just continue working on your responses for the requirements themselves.
Yeah, the audit itself could take anywhere from 2 to 8 months once you hit submit. And so just making sure you have legal done by the end of the audit is really when it becomes most important to have that done and those governing documents uploaded to the platform.
Yeah, I think we do advise if you can upload them before you submit for audit, even though they won't be confirmed in audit. It's the last step essentially of the certification process where B Lab will confirm that you've done the legal correctly. That's the only non-third party confirmation that will be done.
Yeah, and Carrie Ann brings up a really good point. So like worst case scenario, your company goes through the whole audit, you pay for the audit, you've passed the audit, and then at the end you learn, oh no, our investors aren't going to let us do this legal requirement. You cannot become a certified B Corp even if you've passed the audit because this legal requirement is a core pillar of becoming certified. So that's why we do recommend you ideally do this before you submit for audit because you don't want to end up in a scenario where you've paid for audit, you've passed the audit, and you still can't become certified. So again, that's why we've just kind of been trying to drive home the importance of the legal requirement because it is really part of the whole reason that the B Corp movement is here and how we envision helping transform our economic system to serve more than just shareholders.
Okay, you're reading the same one.
Yeah, I'm seeing this question here. Yeah, this is a great question. So again, B Corp certification is open to all businesses. So even if you're not like initially designed as an impact business, you're still able to become a B Corp by meeting the standards. So part of the other goal of our movement is that we want all businesses to be doing business differently and be considering their impacts on people, planet, and community. So even if your business is not structured as an impact business, a mission-driven business, you're just, a lawn care business who wants to make sure they're doing business the right way. B Corp certification is open as long as you meet those eligibility requirements. So, for example, one where we wouldn't is like if you are a tobacco business, a tobacco manufacturer, or a fossil fuels producer, then we won't be able to certify you, but you're still welcome to use the standards to help benchmark and improve your operations. I'm also seeing a question now about the audit process itself. Is it common to fail the audit? So this is one thing that is different too with the new standards. We'll be coming out with a webinar later this year about audit readiness, like how to know if you're ready to submit for audit and what to expect during the audit process. So let's say you submit, you go into the audit process. You heard that the window I gave was pretty like wide for how long the audit takes, and that's basically because of this reason. So let's say you go in to the audit and it turns out you have a public purpose statement, but it's not publicly available. So in this case, the auditor would say, hey, this is a non-conformity. You're not in compliance with the B Lab standards. And depending on the severity of that non-conformity, there are essentially two types, a minor non-conformity and a major non-conformity. So in this example, that would likely be considered a minor non-conformity. You have the public purpose statement, it's just not publicly available on your website yet. The auditor would basically say, you need to make sure that this is added to your website by the time of your next audit. The other type of nonconformity, a major nonconformity, signifies a pretty like a bigger gap in terms of meeting the standards. Maybe you don't have a public purpose statement at all yet. The auditor would basically say, like, you have to get this completed within 6 months. So let's say, right, you're like, man, I didn't even think about it. We don't have a public purpose statement. I thought we did. You would have a 6 month window to get that created and added. And if you're able to do that within 6 months, you could still move forward and pass the audit process. It's only if you're unable to make the changes within that 6 month window would you so-called fail the audit, in which case you would come back, work on closing those gaps that were identified, and resubmit once you've closed them. So again, we do have this new process around nonconformities that give you some time to close those gaps, but it is really important. If you go in and you have 20 major nonconformities, it might be hard to make all those changes within a 6 month window. So you still want to do the best you can, put your best attempt forward when you are submitting for audit and providing the evidence to show that you have done the best you can to meet those requirements.
And then this will be the last question, but there's someone asking about will the consultant training be available again or when? We are retooling the consultant offering right now, and we're trying to get in line with the other global partners who are also offering consulting training. So I would say don't hold your breath on it being finalized like this summer or anything. But any updates we have will be posted on our website, and we will make sure to like post on LinkedIn about it as well. But yeah, everything is quite new, so we're trying to sort of make sure we're not doing duplicative work across our different global partners because everyone's kind of we're all in the same standards now and we're all doing the same thing, so we're trying to make it centralized.
Yeah. And like Carrie mentioned, we are going through a lot of change, a lot of new things. So we are still ironing out bugs. If you are running into any issues with the system, please reach out, log a ticket with us. We'd be happy to get you the clarity you need to keep moving. But want to be cognizant we're a little over time. Thank you all for being here today, for joining us for the Getting Started webinar. Hope this got you feeling more grounded in how to leverage the platform, knowing where you are in the journey, what to do next. We'll be sending out the recording, the deck, all of the resources referenced today. And now y'all know where to find us if you need any help or support on your journey. But we're looking forward to working with y'all and keep up the good work on your B Corp journey. And we'll see y'all soon.